Hi everyone, in this advanced guide, I plan to cover almost all the key principles behind mastering your overall gameplay. So I broke every major tip into 3 or 4 parts, and the same approach applies to defending. Today, let's break down one of the main principles of the new defending meta, zonal defending. We will walk through 3 important pillars in this video. These days, it's almost impossible to stop long through balls because of the AI's downgraded defensive behavior. That's why you must learn manual defending. How does it work? Well, there are 3 types of cursor change options available, and we're going to break them all down. The first one is assisted, where your AI automatically switches the cursor to a necessary player. But there's a catch. It always switches to the nearest player to the ball, which can be fatal. Suppose you're trying to block a move by dragging your defensive midfielder, but the assisted option suddenly switches you to the nearest defender, and boom, you lose control over your entire defensive shape. To avoid that boom, you can choose semi-auto. This gives you a small fraction of a second to decide the cursor switch manually before the AI forces its choice. And that little extra time is extremely crucial during fast-paced defensive moments where every second counts. So one smart way to avoid wrong switches, while still getting some help from the AI, is to shift your cursor change option to semi-automatic. But here comes the real king, manual. Manual cursor change gives you 100% control over your players. You choose exactly when and where to switch, and you can drag them freely until you feel you've positioned them right. However, this one is harder to master if you're used to AI assistance. So my advice is practice with semi-auto first, then slowly move to manual. This step-by-step approach will prepare your mind for true manual control over the entire field. Once you're done setting this up, we'll move to command controls, which include matchup and pressure. I'll cover individual instructions later. Now let's quickly understand why we miss so many defensive opportunities nowadays. It's mainly because of using too much matchup and avoiding pressure. I've made many defending guides over the years saying matchup is important, and it still is. But in this current meta, you must use it wisely. Matchup slows down your defender because the command makes him hold the lane and block the surrounding area. On the other hand, pressure makes the defender engage directly with speed and force, focusing only on the player he's targeting. So you need both, but you also need to use your brain. When you're marking someone from close range, you can tackle using shoulder press or slide tackle. You can even clear the ball directly in head-to-head situations, or whenever you feel holding on to the ball might be risky. But when you're defending from a distance where anything can happen, you need sharp decision-making, a direct press, or a zonal mark, and that's where zonal defending shines. To control the zone and flip the situation in your favor, you can't rely on the same defensive command every time. Your opponent will easily predict it after 1 or 2 minutes. So don't spam matchup. Use it smartly. When you're covering the zone, you must be aware of passing lanes. Simply put, your job is to block your opponent's passing options and make him uncomfortable while moving the ball. Your goal is to cover the zone and erase all easy routes of attack. But if your opponent is smart, he will try to build a back pass chain. Thankfully, most players won't do this because they just want to attack and shoot as fast as possible. Only a few players can break zonal defending with an actual passing matrix. This brings us to the next point, area coverage. Use matchup only when you're close to the marked player. Avoid using it while running to catch up. Use dash plus pressure to close the gap quickly, because pressure is not zonal holding. It's pure tackle-based engagement. When you hold pressure, the player charges directly, but you shouldn't let him tackle blindly. Instead, use your joystick with dash plus pressure to close the gap, then immediately switch to matchup. What did you achieve here? You covered distance faster, avoided a predictable tackle, and now you have the upper hand in controlling the zone and forcing your opponent into uncomfortable moves. You can also call a second defender. That player will rush in for a shoulder charge, and you will control your own defender freely to position yourself better for zonal coverage. Simply hold and swipe upwards to call the second player. But do not rely on him too much. Second players cannot always win shoulder charges. Most importantly, never call a second player from your back defensive line. Doing this opens a gap that your opponent can easily exploit with simple dribbles or quick passes. Always call midfielders instead. They are the best for second player commands. That's why I always say, if possible, use at least one anchorman midfielder. He's perfect for zonal coverage and pressure calls. This entire defensive combo will make your defense extremely strong. Your opponent will actually need to think to break through. Your job is to narrow the attacking possibilities. If you block through balls and stop free runs, the only option left for your opponent is passing and switching lanes. And that gives you plenty of time to reorganize your defensive shape again and again. Now, let's move to individual instructions. I've already uploaded 3 types of instruction guides, so you can check those after this video. Anchoring helps a player maintain his position and save stamina by not roaming. For example, if you anchor your striker, he will never drop into defense. When you anchor a defensive midfielder, he will stay deep even if your team pushes forward. This is important to understand before applying defensive commands. Next is tight marking, which applies constant pressure on a selected opposing player. Defenders track his every movement and try to block him, but it has a drawback. Any defender can leave his main position to mark that target, opening dangerous holes in your backline. That's why man marking is more controlled. You choose one specific player from your team to mark the target, preferably a defensive midfielder. He tracks the opponent while your defenders stay in position. The last one is deep line. When used wisely, it becomes a vital defensive weapon. A deep line player stays deeper and joins the back line to cover free areas. You can also assign deep line to wider midfielders to support the wings, especially if your formation uses 3 center backs. Let's wrap this up by combining zonal coverage with playstyles. Try keeping your build-up center back free when controlling the defense. Drag, tackle, and charge mainly with your destroyer CB, because that's literally his job. Meanwhile, let your build-up CB move freely to cover zones and mark key spaces. That's what he's built for. I hope this video cleared all your confusion about zonal defending. Comment your defenders below and I'll suggest how you can improve your lineup. Click on the next video to understand how individual instructions work best with different strategies. I'll meet you there.